One thing that 2020 will always give me pause in doing is trying exotic foods. I've eaten my fair share of exotic foods, including raw fish and various unusual animals in times past. And I thought I'd make a video to talk about how I went from the standard American diet to something that is more acutely risky, but probably chronically healthier. When I was 15 years old, I used to drink a lot of soda because I was lonely. And to be honest, it was probably a two-way street, right? The fact that I was lonely made me drink all this soda, eat all this junk food. It made me overweight. It caused my mental health to deteriorate, which made it hard to associate with others, right? To be honest, that's probably how it turned out. But I didn't realize that. It wasn't until I was going to college part time, and one day, this was at the beginning of the fall semester in 2003. I noticed a girl that I had liked in the class, and I realized, oh my god, I gotta lose some weight. And then at the end of the semester, I want to do something with the girl. And I was 16 years old, and as soon as I got home, I forgot about what I had said that day, and I went to the refrigerator, and I was just about to get my favorite soda, right? And as I was getting the soda, I was like, wait a minute, let's drink some water first. Let's see how it goes. Maybe I don't need the soda as much as I think I do. And I reached for a glass of water, and I tried to distract myself with something else, right? Maybe I went to play a video game. I can't remember the details, but I remember drinking some water and then just distracting myself, getting on the computer. At the time, I don't think Facebook was around. We used to use AOL Instant Messaging to talk to our friends. I got distracted. I quickly forgot about it because I wasn't thirsty anymore. I was distracted. I was like, hey, that wasn't so bad. And I went to get some more water, and that was good. And so by the end of that night, I was thinking, oh my god, I don't ever need soda again. And so I went back to the classroom the next day. I looked at the girl and I strengthened my resolve. And I think by the second day, I realized I was never going to drink another soda the rest of my life. And the semester goes by, and I forgot about that girl. I don't know why. I never saw the girl after the semester either. But later that Christmas, I went online to Google about not drinking soda because I was so proud of myself. Because it had seemed like such a big deal not that many months earlier, and I had stopped it. And so I went on Google, and maybe it wasn't Google. It was a search engine that was popular in the early 2000s, and I typed "stop drinking soda," and I pulled up a website. I didn't realize it at the time, but it was Mike Adams. He is the director of Natural News. He at the time he was really gung ho about not drinking soda. Like half of his pages were about not drinking soda. That's why I found him, because I searched "stop drinking soda," and he had like an hour long podcast about not drinking soda. And in the video, he said that it would be preferable to drink beer instead. And obviously, I wasn't old enough to drink beer, so I went to Whole Foods and I discovered they had a non-alcoholic beer. And so I got a 6-pack of that stuff, and it tasted pretty good. And soon enough, I was drinking it pretty regularly. Around the same time, I started to learn how to drive. And one day, my dad had taken me to drive with him, and I was behind the wheel. And before I knew it, I didn't even realize it as I was doing it. I was driving and drinking a non-alcoholic beer. And as soon as I realized what I was doing, I thought it was so funny. I opened my window and I waved the beer out the window and say, "See, I'm drinking and driving, stop me!" And my dad was so upset at that remark. But I was 16 years old, and I was so pleased that I had stopped drinking soda that it didn't bother me. And for a long time, I didn't take driving very seriously, and so I didn't get my license until I was 19 years old. It was kind of embarrassing. I failed the test quite a few times. Because to me, it was a big joke. My parents took me anywhere I wanted to go. Around the same time, I wanted to lose weight because of the girl I had seen in the classroom, so I wanted to exercise a lot, walk a lot. And so I was reading Natural News. I don't think he was called Natural News at the time. He was just called Mike Adams, like health page or something like that. And Mike was talking about eating various superfoods, which I had no access to at the time. We lived in the countryside, and one day my family noticed a bumblebee in our house, and I went to hit the bee and kill it. And as soon as I killed the bee, I picked it up and I ate it. And my mom was so upset at me doing that. I wanted to try something new. I thought I had tried all the healthy foods around the area. I had stopped drinking soda. I had started reading labels. I cut out every bad ingredient in my lifestyle. I think sugar was obviously number one, trans fat, and MSG. I think those were the three ingredients I focused on at the beginning. And I wanted to try something new. And I remember daydreaming a lot because my mom used to threaten me a lot. You know, when I would misbehave, she would say something along the lines of, when you turn 18, I'm kicking you out, right? I bet a lot of moms say that. I remember thinking, well, if I get kicked out, at least I get to try all sorts of foods that my mom would never let me try, right? Because my parents didn't believe in healthy eating. They thought that I was going to die from not eating sugar. There was a time when my parents literally thought that. They thought that I was going to cause, like, nutritional deficiencies from not eating McDonald's. Literally. I mean, they obviously, I don't blame them. There's a lot of media influence and all that. So finally, I moved out when I was 21. So my mom didn't keep that threat. So I moved out when I was 21 to go pursue my PhD. And as soon as I moved out, I tried all sorts of new foods because I moved to a city, and there were Whole Foods and natural food stores, and I got a lot of exotic food that I never thought of before. Unfortunately, my second year working on my PhD, I met a girl who took advantage of me. I spent all my money on her, didn't have any money to eat right. And what I ended up doing was, it was winter time. We had a lot of roadkill in the area of Rochester I was living in. And I would see roadkill and I would pick it up and I'd go home and chop it up and eat it. And around the same time, I also lost my apartment. So I moved everything into the office where I was working on my PhD. Really nice. They had a little kitchen in there. And on the weekends, I would chop up all the roadkill and then I would put it into a crock pot to cook. I still remember the entire setup. I would cook over the weekend because there was nobody there to complain about the smell. And then I would put it into the freezer and microwave it when I needed food. And for quite a number of months, I was eating squirrels and deer. What else did I eat? Skunk. I think there was even one time a cat. And also, when winter turned into spring, my friends and I went fishing along Lake Ontario, and I took the fish home to eat. Eventually, I got very ill, chronic fatigue, and I ended up having to break up with the girl, and it didn't take long after I broke up with the girl to get better. I was just eating all sorts of crap, and I probably had heavy metal toxicity from all the fish out of Lake Ontario, not to mention all the diseases from the skunks. And I'm lucky I didn't kickstart a COVID-09 or COVID-10 from what I was eating, and that's all good. And I kept clean for a number of years after that and forgot all about that experience. My third year at my PhD program, I got over my fear of flying. My advisor wanted me to go to a conference in Italy, and it was time for me to get over my fear of flying. I hadn't flown for 8 years at this point. I got very scared of flying after 9/11 and Space Shuttle Columbia. And it was a really big insult because after 9/11, I told my dad, because he's a chemical engineer, I said, well, one day it will take only half an hour to fly to see our family in Taiwan. I think I can put up with a half an hour flight. It would just be like going on a theme park ride. It might be scary, but it's short. Well, 2 years later, a flying machine capable of doing that in half an hour crashes as well. So that was a big insult to me, and I didn't want to fly after Columbia. But it was time for me to get over it. I had to go to this conference. 5 years after the conference, in 2016, I took a vacation to Warsaw and Gdansk, Poland, and I decided to try some raw fish. It wasn't supposed to be eaten raw, but it was fish that I had never seen before. I decided to eat it raw. I ate fish out of Lake Ontario raw before, so I didn't think it was that big a deal. I got food poisoning. I ended up having to go to the hospital to get antibiotics through an IV. And at the hospital, this was in Warsaw, obviously huge language barriers. I had a hard time communicating that I needed my healthy foods because I've battled. I have high functioning autism, and I really improved a lot when I switched to healthier foods. I really don't want to look back, and I had a hard time communicating that with the doctor because of language barriers, and so I ended up not eating for like a day and a half, which was really nice because I very rarely go on a fast like that. Sometimes when I'm forced to go on a fast, it's a blessing in disguise. Uh, but it made me really worried about the coronavirus earlier this year because I worried if I went to the hospital now and there's so many other priorities. There's no way the doctor's going to listen to my dietary restrictions. I mean, they shouldn't because there's a lot of other high priority patients to listen to at this time. So it made me much more cautious. Um, so I left, and 2 years later, I was on my way to Taiwan. I spent a few nights in Tokyo first. I really love the sushi in Japan, but I was worried about getting locked up again in Japan because I don't speak Japanese. So I only ate the sushi on the very last day of the 3 day stay in Tokyo because if I ended up in the hospital, I wanted to go to the hospital in Taiwan where I could tell the doctor about. I speak Chinese, so I wanted to make sure if I ended up in the hospital, it would be in Taiwan. So I only ate the sushi on the last day. And then on the way back, I flew through Shanghai, China, where I spent one day there. I got to Shanghai around 5, 6 p.m. and I took a walk out of the hotel. And I walked into I didn't know what it was called back then, but it's a wet market. And I was going to try some organs from, I think it was dog meat. I can't remember the details. And I asked the vendor if he uses MSG in his cooking, if there's any sugar. And the vendor laughed at me. It made me very uncomfortable because I didn't know if it was a joke and he was going to put stuff in there and not tell me about it. And so I walked away from it. I got a bunch of bananas instead. And I felt really disappointed about that until I got home and then a little over a year later learned about what happened at the wet market. Not that wet market, but another wet market in China. And I'm relieved I actually didn't try it that time. Thank God that the vendor really made fun of me. But I think my days of trying exotic food are over. I was just watching people fishing out of where was this? This was in along the shores of one of the beaches in Bellevue, Washington, where the boat launches are, and it just gave me a good memory. I'll never indulge in any of that again. I've had my experiences, and I'm through with it. And I think it's time to say goodbye to that chapter in my life. Thanks for watching.